Okay, so let's talk about, right, I'm getting angry now. Let's talk about the BRICS. Right, so the major players in the BRICS are China. And then in about 8th place would be India, because there is no 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th or 7th. And then Russia, and then that mighty powerhouse called South Africa. Just to give you an idea, Montana has a bigger economy than South Africa does. And now there's more countries joining, but let's look at these original countries. So there's a dictatorship, obviously running in China. You call it communist, but really it's a dictatorship. Then the Russians, well, that's obviously a dictatorship, which has just killed 1 million of its own people. We won't talk about the death camps in China, by the way. Then we talk about South Africa, which is basically a failed state. And then you've got India, an up-and-coming democracy. What have these places got in common with each other? Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Brazil. Now, BRICS as a concept was put together by an economist a few years ago, simply as a shorthand for pointing out some of the major global south players. That's all it was. There's no join the BRICS. This isn't like the EU or the setting up the United States. They do a bit of trade together, but they do a ton of trade with everyone else as well. So this doesn't really mean anything useful. Anyway, back to whatever this is.
They joined a full partner of the BRICS. BRICS, by the way, means it's the first letters of the countries Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. A dozen years ago, they began to form an alliance of what came to be called the Global South.
It's not an alliance. It's not an alliance. It is simply a talking shop, actually. That's it. That's really all there is to it.
To be independent, relatively, from the domination of the United States. And the core economy there, the biggest one, the most powerful, is, I'm sorry to tell you this, I know it'll come as an upset, the People's Republic of China. Remember, I'm the messenger. I have no responsibility for this at all.
China's about 70% of the size of the BRICS, by the way, before the new countries joined.
China and the BRICS. Indonesia joined them. Together now, the BRICS, built around China, have as the population of the countries that are part of the BRICS about 22 countries.
There's not 22 countries in the BRICS. There are 9, as you can see on your screen now. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Indonesia, and the UAE. So aren't these lovely places to live? I do wonder how many people are trying to move really to any of these places. Most of them are despotic. Very few, other than India and Indonesia, are really in any way functioning democracies. And the GDP per head of the average of these is well under $10,000 a year. We'll see later that the US is $80,000 a year. And you could say, yeah, but all the mega rich people have stolen it. And I will accept that the disparity in wealth in the US is a problem. But it's certainly got the wealth. It's just not necessarily evenly distributed it. But this idea that there's some global power coming together is frankly nonsense. The chances of India and China going to war with each other over border disputes over the next 5 years is pretty high. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if China decided that Manchuria, which used to be part of China, or was for a while, is now theirs again after the Russians have been bled dry by the Ukrainian war. So let's not pretend this is some sort of modern NATO or EU or United States. It isn't at all.
Now, altogether, they have about 55 to 60% of the population of the.
Actually, they have 46% of the world's population, but I guess 60% sounded better. As if it matters. Unfortunately, it's 44% of some of the poorest people on the planet. And that's a reality.
World are members. What is the percentage of the world's population of the United States? 4.5%. You understand?
I do understand, and that just shows that the United States is an incredible place to be, because look at the productivity. The US is something like 25 to 28% of the global economy, and it's only 4.5% of the population. The productivity of North America is unbelievably high. That's a thing to celebrate, not a thing to denigrate or suggest is a bad thing in some strange way. His argument makes no sense.
4.5%, they are 50 to 60%. In the
46%.
words of Mickey Mouse, those odds are not so good, no matter how you...
Odds of what? I don't understand that. 46% versus... Well, it's not even versus, is it? Because we trade with pretty much every nation there. So I don't really understand this versus. It sounds just like scaremongering to me.
Cut it. And as a group, let me tell you how you cut it. We in economics have this little game. We ask, what is the total output in goods and services in a year of a country? Gives us a kind of rough idea of how big a country it is, how important its footprint is in the world. Okay, so if you take the BRICS together now, they are about 35%.
Actually, the BRICS are 27% of the global economy, not 35%. And there's a graph on screen now to show you from the IMF or somebody else important that this is a lie. And even if it wasn't a lie, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with whatever it is, 45% of the world's population having 35% of the global economy. It doesn't seem unreasonable, actually. But again, why is this scary? Why is this scary?
Maybe a bit more. Total output of the world. If you add up each of those countries' total output in a year, and you add them up, they account for 36%, more or less, of the world's output. Now let's compare that to the United States and its major allies. Those are called the G7, the group of seven. United States, Japan, Canada, Britain, France, Italy, and Spain. Okay. That used to be the dominant player of the world.
It is the dominant player of the world. It's significantly larger than the BRICS, and the BRICS aren't even one thing anyway. Not that the G7 is, but they all trade with each other.
Used to be what world trade meant, what they did. Together they, that's all of them, now account for about 28% of the world's output.
No, that's not true either. The real number's on your screen now, but it isn't 28%.
Do you understand? The BRICS is now what the United States was.
No, it isn't. That's not remotely true. That doesn't make any sense at all. You add up a bunch of completely disparate economies, all of whom, or many of whom, have disputes with each other, and somehow that matters that they're the same size as the US, which, by the way, they're not. Even when you add them all together, they're not as big as the US.